Folks, as this war in Iran keeps on developing, it keeps on going in unexpected directions. It was supposed to be a few days, now we're getting into the weeks. But the real question behind all of this is, how much is it costing? I've been wondering myself, I've been thinking I wanted to put together a video where I dug deep and I tried to work out exactly how much this war in Iran is actually costing America already. And unfortunately, folks, it's billions. It's billions. Okay, not millions, not trillions yet, but currently billions, all right? America has had equipment worth billions destroyed. Literally billions of dollars. This isn't a stock market crash. This is a literal stuff being blown up and set on fire. They've kaboomed billions of dollars worth of stuff that America built and spent money on and spent hard time on. This war isn't just America pile driving Iran. America's losing a lot of money. Now, Iran's losing a lot of money too. But in this video, I'm going to break down basically the whole backstory of the cost of the war. We're going to react to a few things, a few different estimates. But I'm unfortunately here to inform you people that this war is already costing a lot. And it's going to cost you a lot. It's going to cost you a lot. Your gas prices are probably going to go up. Cost of everything might go up. You might not, some things you might not be able to get anymore. Okay, I'm not trying to alarm you, but these are the facts. So a couple videos going around. Okay, this is Al Jazeera breakdown of how much the war is supposedly costing per day, and it's billions.
If you look at just the first 100 hours of the war on Iran, the U.S. spent $3.7 billion. That's more than what most countries spent on their entire militaries in 2024. Gone in 4 days. Less than 5% of it approved by Congress. Here's how much a day of war on Iran costs the U.S. The Center for Strategic and International Studies broke down the bill. Item 1, operations. Keeping more than 200 fighter jets in the air, a fleet of warships at sea, and artillery on the ground. About $196 million. Most of it was already budgeted. The real cost was what this war machine fired. Item 2, munitions. Over 2,600 guided weapons launched in 100 hours. Missiles, precision bombs, drones. Replacing them cost $3.1 billion. Item 3, things that broke.
That's a lot.
3 F-15 jets destroyed by friendly fire in Kuwait. The bill came in
Wait. Friendly fire? So you guys destroyed those.
at $359 million. Add it all up, and it's $3.7 billion for 4 days of war. At the beginning of the campaign, the most expensive weapons went first. On day 1, Iranian air defenses could destroy almost anything that got close. So the U.S. struck from a distance with Tomahawk cruise missiles at $3.6 million apiece. By day 4, with Iranian defenses degraded, bombers dropped $80,000 smart bombs. But the most expensive part of this war isn't the bombing, it's stopping what Iran fires back.
See, I've said this in videos before, right? The Middle East is in big trouble because these drones that Iran are sending, they're hard to shoot down and they're expensive to shoot down. They cost way more to shoot down than they cost to send. And they're just going to bleed the Western supported countries of the Middle East dry. They're kind of, I'm not going to lie, these Iranians, okay, they're the ops, but like they kind of had a game plan.
A Shahed drone costs Iran up to $50,000. Shooting one down can cost 100 times more. In 4 days, Iran launched 500 ballistic missiles and 2,000 drones. And they don't necessarily need to hit anything. Every launch depletes the other side's air defense stockpile. Gulf allies helped absorb the blow. They intercepted more than 1,800 missiles and drones. So who pays for all this, and how? Of the $3.7 billion, only $178 million was in the Pentagon's budget. Everything else?
178 million was in the budget, and they've spent 3.7 billion. Is this going to stop, or is this going to continue? Is this number going to get big? I feel like this number might get bigger.
No funding source. The Trump administration is running this war on a military credit card, and Congress hasn't seen the bill yet. When it arrives, there are 3 ways to pay. 1, a supplemental spending bill. Trump asks Congress for emergency money, the way George W. Bush did after Iraq and Afghanistan. But every vote on funding becomes a vote on the war. 2, redirect part of the $150 billion from the first Trump reconciliation bill. But that money has already been promised elsewhere. 3, roll it into a future spending bill that may never pass. Today, every day of this war costs close to $1 billion. Some Republicans estimate it may even be double that, and 4 days cost about what it would to rebuild every single school destroyed in Gaza.
What a way to end. What a way to end. So, look, this is costing some people believe it up to $2 billion a day, this insane war. Now, there was a Redditor that basically broke down some of these financial figures, some of the similar figures that we just saw in Al Jazeera, but in more detail. Okay, this was a post that was going around, right, about CENTCOM announcing the loss of a KC-135 over Iraq. Okay, this was a whole refueling aircraft that went down. It occurred in friendly airspace, and I believe 6 people actually died. It wasn't hostile fire or friendly fire. It was actually, I believe, a collision. 2 aircraft involved in the incident, and this was very serious. So this is the official word from CENTCOM. All crew members of the US KC-135 lost in Iraq confirmed deceased. Nobody survived. All 6 crew members aboard the whole refueling aircraft that went down in Western Iraq are confirmed deceased. The aircraft was lost while flying over friendly airspace in Operation Epic Fury. The circumstances of the incident are under investigation, but the loss of the aircraft was not due to hostilities. Okay, it is bad. That's a bad look. So this Redditor, one font, actually made a pretty insane breakdown of all of the losses on both sides that have been confirmed in the media, and also basically just like, you know, any things that have been destroyed, Patriot interceptors or UAVs, even like American drones that strike as well as Israeli drones that strike. It is nailed and basically explained every single one of them that's been lost. Now, this KC-135 Strato tanker, the refueling aircraft, that's a loss of $60 million, right? That's pretty bad. But there is over here, the US have a full $1 billion loss. Now, this was an installation of a strategic radar in Qatar. It cost them $1.1 billion for this one thing to be blown up, an early warning system, a strategic radar. Not only does that leave things vulnerable over there, but you've now got $1 billion loss. This is insane. So Iran's losses are pretty huge too. Let's not get it twisted, all right? They've lost 8 of these Tomcat fighter jets. That's 280 million. All these being destroyed. So hella fighter jets, 25 mil, 10 mil. Attack jets worth 60 mil, 2 of those. A trainer, I don't know what, Yak 130 trainer was shot down. Well, let's look that up. Let's see what that is. Okay, so it's some kind of Russian training jet worth a lot of money. Very expensive. Okay, 15 mil out the sky. 90 mils worth of these Hercules transporters. Just millions, okay? 250 mil, 35 mil, 450 mil worth of Boeing 747 cargo planes have been destroyed, right? A bunch of unknown aircraft, they're estimating various, could be as much as $200 million. This is all Iran's losses, and their navy has been absolutely decimated, and these are very expensive. $500 million of 2 Muj-class frigates gone, $300 million submarine destroyed during the naval strikes, another frigate, 250 million. They're bleeding money as well. Soleimani, ironically, class missile corvettes. They're worth 80 million. 4 of them have been destroyed, and that's 320 million. The losses are just out of control, but on both sides. America's lost 3 F-15s that are worth 270 million. They've lost a bunch of Reaper drones, up to 11. That could be 330 million. 60 million refueling aircraft, as we covered. 10 Hermes, so they're losing their designer drones. This is Israel, though. Israel losing their designer drip. $80 million worth of Hermes falling out the sky. It's actually crazy. 105 million worth of these UAVs. Israel taking some big losses too, but America's losing more money to this thing than Israel. That's the crazy thing. Now, there's definitely a lot of damage to Israel that's not factored into here, but it is just, this is screwed, right? This is so screwed, right? People saying this is good info. The Iran one's not complete. There's even more drone strike sites that have been taken out, damage on the ground. It is absolutely out of control. People are saying tired air crew make mistakes, doesn't make much of an impact to cause heavy damage. There's also incidences of fighters hot-dogging it after tanking. What does that mean? The one that comes to mind is a Marine F-18 that tanked from a C-30 off the coast of Japan and decided to aileron roll his aircraft over the top of a C-30 to move into his correct position. He hit the vertical stabilizer and the C-30 went down with a total loss of life. That is a very, very bad move. They're saying that's another, at a minimum, 3 soldiers killed in action. Turned out it was 6, I believe. 2 friendly aircraft crashed. It's very bad, all right? It is very bad. So there's a little bit more information on the loss of this refueling plane, which was very, very expensive, tens of millions of dollars.
Overnight, rescue efforts underway after a refueling plane went down in Iraq. The KC-135 aircraft is part of military operations against Iran, but officials say the crash was not because of hostile or friendly fire. Central Command says 2 aircraft were involved. The other plane landed safely, but 5 crew members were reportedly aboard the plane that crashed. And unlike fighter jets, the 135 is not equipped with parachutes.
About 20 years ago, the Air Force decided that they were going to remove any parachutes that were aboard because they didn't see the point. They felt that at some point it really didn't matter, that the aircraft could go down and the pilots would not have enough time to get to the back of the aircraft and try to jump out.
Meanwhile, Iran's new supreme leader has issued his first public statement through a woman on state TV, vowing Iran will continue targeting global oil supplies by blocking the critical Strait of Hormuz. Just one day after striking oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, the New York Times reports Iran has now started laying more mines in the strait. President Trump earlier this week threatened to hit Iran, quote, 20 times harder if it blocked oil shipments. Any U.S. Navy escorts for
So they're going to block these oil shipments, okay? The Strait of Hormuz, everybody's learning about that now. It's this, little bottleneck in the Middle East where a lot of goods come through. And Iran, they're saying they're putting mines. They're apparently targeting American oil tankers. It's pretty bad. But back to the refueling plane that fell out the sky. Obviously, as I've confirmed, it basically hit the news that, all of the crew were confirmed dead. And, this is a pretty devastating loss. And yeah, it wasn't shot down by enemy fire, but it's like it wouldn't be over there doing these operations, making these risky maneuvers if it weren't for this war.
Overnight, rescue efforts underway after a refueling plane went down in Iraq.
That's not the right video, my bad. So there's some more information sort of about the backstory of the plane.
I want to bring you some breaking news. 4 of the 6 crew members aboard a U.S. military aircraft that's crashed in western Iraq have been confirmed to have been killed. That's according to the U.S. military. We can go to Rosalind Jordan, who's in Washington, D.C. for us. That was one of the questions that was outstanding after the details of this crash started coming out. What is the latest that we're hearing, Ros?
Well, there's just this brief confirmation coming from CENTCOM that 4 of the 6 crew members were in fact killed. We don't know the condition of the 2 surviving crew members, and obviously identifications of these crew members who both were killed and who have survived will not be made public until their families have been notified.
So all 6 crew members passed away, and the families probably have been notified at this point, but their identities haven't been released. But there's been some people basically sharing pictures on Reddit saying one of the American refueling tankers involved in the accident in Iraqi airspace was photographed at Ben Gurion Airport missing a significant part of its vertical stabilizer. The footage reached us this morning and sheds lights on the unusual accident during the strikes in Iran. So they're saying it's missing a big part of its vertical stabilizer. It suffered some damage. It makes you wonder how that happened. It says the second aircraft involved in the incident crashed in Iraq. The fate of the 6 crew members is unknown at that point. This is apparently how it should have looked. That's pretty bad. That might be enough for a plane to come down. I don't know. Oh, wow. So that's saying there's a big chunk of it missing. It's not just a little bit. Look how much is chewed off. Wow. So they've superimposed these 2 images over each other. There was a huge chunk of this stabilizer missing. That definitely isn't going to help your flying abilities, I would say. I think half rudder missing. Just half of it missing. That's crazy. That's a lot. They're saying that's before it flew? One of the American refueling tanks, significant. That's crazy. I wonder if that is the same one. I think people are saying it's the same one. So really, the Pentagon is now finding out just how much money these types of walls cost. And it is definitely going to keep bleeding the country dry, unfortunately. Okay, and it's hard to even estimate the exact true cost, especially in terms of, lives lost, which arguably are more valuable than money. But apparently, the Pentagon is actually withholding accurate information. They don't really want the people to know how much this is costing.
We are learning more today about the Iranian drone attack in Kuwait that killed 6 U.S. service members last week. And the details suggest that the injuries to U.S. service members from that attack are more severe than previously revealed. According to CBS News reporting, dozens of troops suffered, quote, injuries including brain trauma, shrapnel wounds, and burns. At least 1 may require the amputation of a limb, and more than 30 military members remained in hospitals Tuesday night. That kind of reporting underscores how crucial the journalists covering the war and the Pentagon are, especially at a moment like this. Yet Pete Hegseth's department is intensifying its restrictions on journalists. After Pete Hegseth appeared at a press briefing last week, 3 days after the initial strikes on Iran, his first appearance at a briefing since June, photographers were banned by the Pentagon. Washington Post reports that, quote, several outlets, including the Associated Press, Reuters, and Getty Images, sent photographers to the briefing from Hegseth and General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But after they published photos, which have broad reach because they are licensed by publications globally, members of Pete Hegseth's staff told colleagues that they did not like the way the secretary looked. Pete Hegseth.
I'm not going to lie, like the sort of snarl that he's got going on during this briefing, it's not the best look. I kind of hear it. I hear what he's saying.
Members of Pete Hegseth's staff told colleagues that they did not like the way the secretary looked. Pete Hegseth's aides decided to shut out photographers from the two subsequent briefings at the Pentagon on March 4th and March 10th, according to the two people familiar with the decision. The Pentagon says that the journalists were banned in order to use the space more effectively. I want to bring in Politico.
So if you use the space more effectively and not take any snarling pictures. Now, basically, there's been more speculation about the exact cost of the war. USA just published a full breakdown of how much it's actually costing taxpayers at a certain point, and it is very expensive, okay? We were hearing numbers of like 2.8, 3 million, maybe a billion, like maybe $1 billion a day, but a lot of people are saying that it's more, and the Pentagon don't really want people getting all up in their business about this. This is how much is the Iran war costing taxpayers. Here's what estimates show. At least 11.3 billion spent in the Iran war's first days surpasses the funds allocated to the National Cancer Institute of 7.4 billion, and it nearly reaches the 12.4 billion spent on Head Start. So basically it says, oops daisy, what's going on? It said the first 6 days of war in Iran could cost taxpayers in the US 11.3 billion in munitions, all right, ammunition alone. According to Pentagon estimates reviewed by lawmakers, and experts say the final cost will only increase. That total does not include the cost of operating and maintaining the military force engaged in the war or battle damage sustained from Iran's attacks. The military used about 5.6 billion in munitions in the first 2 days of the conflict, and according to a person with knowledge of the estimate, the munitions cost was first reported by the Washington Post. The money spent on munitions and the added expense of any damage done to the US military infrastructure by Iran's retaliations on US bases aren't even factored into the Pentagon's yearly $1 trillion budget. So they've not factored in money to repair the stuff that got blown up by Iran. That's going to be expensive then. You're going to have to find some more money, right? Given this deficit, apparently President Donald Trump could be asking Congress for more money to fund the war, but no request has been submitted as yet, and that is going to go down like a lead balloon. Okay, that's going to be tough, all right? And are we having these midterms? I don't know. Might not be having those midterms, maybe. It says the US and Israel launched joint attacks on Iran on February the 28th, and they brought an abrupt end to at least a year of negotiations between the Trump admin and the country over its nuclear program. Since then, US and Israeli forces have killed many of Iran's top political and military leaders and launched a bombing campaign that's killed more than 1,200 Iranians. Iran launched retaliation attacks on the US bases and allies in the region and have killed 7 US service members and wounded at least 140. That's really, really bad. Trump officials have refused to lay out a definitive timeline for the war. Trump told reporters on March the 9th it's very complete and will wrap up very soon without elaborating on when it would end. We probably should wrap it up ASAP, I reckon. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth said at a news conference the following day, "Today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran." Does that mean expensive as well? Most expensive day? They haven't given any more comment on the cost of the war. First few days of the war cost nearly $1 billion a day. So basically they've cited a daily cost of about $1 billion. The first 100 hours they spent 189.4 million a day, a total of 3.7 billion. People are saying the billion a day number's been floated around, could be even more, and the question is being avoided by top Pentagon officials. They've been totally unforthcoming about the cost, so I'm not holding my breath. Yeah, definitely don't hold your breath about that. There was a classified briefing with military leaders. Elizabeth Warren would basically tell reporters, there's no money for 15 million Americans who lost their healthcare. There's $1 billion a day to spend on bombing Iran. It's a bad look. It's not a great, amazing look. So not everyone's upset, right? Lindsey Graham basically said, the $1 billion a day spent in Iran was the best money ever spent. What's it worth to America to take down a religious Nazi regime who's trying to build a nuclear weapon to deliver America? That's a really good investment. That's a hell of a way of framing it. I mean, look, you can frame it that way. You definitely can frame it that way. But if you frame it that way, that kind of says like, so we're down to just spend unlimited money on this. This is it's a holy war after all, right? It was money when we're going to get into the paradise and all that stuff. That's how they be thinking. But anyway, the 11 billion spent on munitions in the first days of the war is much more than was allocated to the National Cancer Institute. It's more than was marked off for Head Start, a preschool program for low-income children. But apparently this is more important. We got to blow up Iran. They want to destroy America. They want to have a nuclear program. It is worth unlimited money. Okay, it is just It's scary, honestly. And they're saying the costs have been very high, especially for the first days. They're going to spend less. They're going to start using less expensive munitions. Like, is it still going to get the job done, folks? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to still do that. They're going to switch from using large, deliberate weapons fired from outside the reach of Iran's defenses to precision strikes with weapons like free-falling joint direct attack munitions or JDAMs and Hellfire missiles, which hit targets up to 15 miles and 6 miles away, respectively. So we're going to start using the cheaper weapons. Is that a good sign that we're going to start using the cheaper stuff? Did we use all the good stuff? I hope that's not the case. I hope there's still some good stuff left. Yeah, a little bit scary. So they're basically saying that the Tomahawk missiles are 3.6 million a piece compared with an 80 grand price tag for a JDAM, right? Money's just, we're going to have to just go to the base model JDAMs and just hope that we can still win this war with the budget option, with the bottom shelf, with the Sam's Club. We get some Costco missiles going up there. I don't know if that's the greatest idea. They've fired dozens of expensive Patriot and THAAD missile interceptors because they're basically trying to defend against Iran attacking US bases and the allies in the region. Defensive munitions that have cost $1.6 billion in that span. Okay, but those costs could drop as the US takes out more of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. So we've got to hope that they can actually stop the launchers that are causing these attacks. And then maybe they'll be able to stop spending money on it. It's not great. It says missile attacks continue to trend downward 90%. That's good. And one-way drones have decreased 83%. I hope that is true. Okay, but the Navy is costing a lot, all right? Apparently, it's going to grow. The cost of operating the Navy in the Middle East will grow by 15.4 million every day. So it's saying that will grow as in you're going to spend that much, you're going to spend that much or more every day, and it's going to keep compounding to limitless amounts. They're saying the cost could add up quickly, all right? Nobody basically wants to say exactly what the specific dollar cost in the war. It would always be an underestimate. It always costs more than people think. The cost will might not go down, even if the cost per weapon is going down. They're still going to be spending a lot. Okay, it's going to be a compounding cost down the line. Obligations to veterans that served in this war. Does America really be looking after their veterans like they should? That's been debated pretty intensely. Okay, the costs of the US wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were around 50 to 60 billion. They ended up costing a combined 8 trillion. I didn't know numbers went that high. That is a higher number than I've ever seen in my life. I didn't know they went up to 8 trillion. What's after trillion? Quadrillion? A pentillion? This is insane. They're going to have to invent new numbers to actually cost out this war. This is terrifying. They're saying Trump could ask for potentially more than 50 billion in emergency funding for the war. And is that all going to get spent? Is that going to be gone? I'm pretty scared. This is a pretty ominous quote at the end. It said, the American people deserve to know what this war is costing in blood and treasure. All right? I guess they're going to find some treasure. There's been talk of some treasure. Now, the backdrop of all this happening is pretty dire because basically there is allegedly a growing unemployment crisis in America. And, despite was it the Dow being 50,000, baby? Apparently, there are some pretty bad financial situations going on in the United States that
the U.S. just lost 92,000 jobs in a month. Economists expected 60,000 jobs to be added, but instead, employers cut nearly every sector. Restaurants lost 30,000 jobs. Healthcare lost 28,000. Factories have now cut jobs in 14 of the last 15 months. Right, and unemployment jumped to 4.4%. And then it gets worse. The government also revised December and January numbers down by another 69,000 jobs that never actually existed. And this after last year, the economy averaged just 15,000 jobs a month under Trump's tariff chaos. So January looked like a rebound, but February killed that hope. One economist even called it a knockdown blow. You have companies not hiring because they don't know what's coming next. The war with Iran spiking fuel costs, the tariffs keep changing, and AI is making employers wonder if they even need new workers. And now you've got the Fed meeting March 17th, and they're split between cutting rates to save the job market and keeping them high to fight inflation, which the war is going to make worse. So ultimately, the economy is stuck, and nobody seems to have a plan to unstick it. But hey, let me know your thoughts and reactions in those comments. Share to spread the word and follow to stay in the loop.
So, yeah, it might not be the best timing for all of this, okay? They're spending absolutely billions on the war. In some ways, it's going well. They've killed the leadership and the leadership's successors and their successors, and apparently they're talking about that the guy that took over is now in a coma. He might have lost a leg, right? Is that going to be the end of it? Is if we can take out his other leg or like put him into a spliff? Like, is this whole thing over? I don't know. I'm getting a little bit scared and concerned about this war. I definitely can see why Iran having a nuclear program is a big problem. I do feel like, Israel are trying to get some sort of stability and get back in the Middle East for what they've been dealing with, Hezbollah and all that, and Iran funding a lot of very shady operations over there. But also, I hope there's a long-term plan for this. And clearly, it's very expensive. So if I hear anything more about the absolutely dazzling costs of this situation, I will be sure to let you guys know. I've got another Iran, probably a couple more Iran war videos that I might do today. There's a little David update. There might be some Epstein files going around, a few little leftover scraps of the Epstein files to talk about. But I will be sure to keep you guys updated. I appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, I'm just following all of this stuff with interest, and I'm just hoping, I'm praying that things can at least get cheaper, if not safer. And let's have some peace, man. Let's have some peace in the Middle East, potentially. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. Peace.